Today's episode is brought to you by Real Estate Radio Experts. If you want to level up in your business and build it on the right way with listings on the listing side, you need to get with radio. Come on, man. And look, it's not as expensive as you might think. And this is a proven track record. It is proven that radio works. So I'm not sure what you're waiting for, but if you are interested in doing radio, again, leveling up, go to realestateradioexperts.com. Fill out the getting started sheet, and let's have a chat. Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first $1 million in real estate. Yeah. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
Now, today's guest, speaking of radio, here's the deal. I interview the Godfather, the guy who pioneered radio for real estate agents, a guy named Russell Shaw. And we talk about his whole genesis story. We talk about how he's this guy, he was struggling. He was selling 20 or so deals a year. And then all of a sudden he went to 100, 200, 300, 400 by utilizing radio. So we get into everything. We get into demographics. We get into what type of stations in terms of formats. We talk about spots, how to buy spots. We talk about copy. We talk about everything. So if you're thinking about doing radio, I would say, number one, don't buy it yourself. You should hire real estate radio experts. And let me divulge something to you guys here. Here's the deal. And nobody should ever try to buy radio on their own. Okay? For two reasons. One, and I'll save the zinger for the last, but one is you simply don't know how to look at numbers. Sorry, guys. You don't know how to look at AQH. You don't know how to look at TSL. You don't know how to ask the right questions about rankers. And buying radio, much is a science. Okay, so that's why you shouldn't do it. But here's the real kicker, guys. When we take an agent and say, look, we represent Agent X. That'd be a cool band name, right? Agent X. Let's just see if that domain's available. But so we have Agent X and we go to 105.3. They pay us as a buyer's agent. So guess what? It fundamentally doesn't cost you anything. All you guys are doing is paying for airtime. So it is crazy not to use an agency like us. Now, other agencies, they might charge you, some other agencies will charge you $3,000, to have their expertise. We don't. So that's it. I hope you like this episode. Let's get to it. Today on the show, we're doing something a little bit different. Now, I always talk with top producing agents. Today is no different, except what we're going to cover today. I'm going to do a deep dive on radio. And yes, I know this is going to be a very self-interested episode. The person who I have on the show today, this guy pioneered real estate radio. I'm thrilled to welcome Russell Shaw. Hey, Russell, thanks for taking the time out today.
It is a pleasure, buddy. Glad to be here.
So listen, normally what I do, with the people that I'm talking to, I have them talk about, we kind of do a nuts and bolts overview of team transactions and volume. Now, I don't want to do that with you. I want to jump into, you've been in the industry a long time. I want to give us an overview of who you are, the man behind the machine, and then I want to get into your thoughts around radio.
You got it. I've been in real estate for 36 years. I started in 1978. My first 12 years, I was an ordinary agent selling between 17 and 22 deals a year. I mostly got listings that I fell into, which is to say I'd already sold them a house, or it was someone that I knew. I wasn't really a lister. I knew there was such a thing, but I wasn't a lister because I only got listings that were sort of handed to me. I lived from paycheck to paycheck, from closing to closing, and I knew I wanted to get all the way in the business or get the hell out of it. I thought having an almost life and an almost career was sickening. Decided to become a lister. Not that I knew how, I just decided to become a lister, and canceled my ad in Homes Illustrated, which was how I made my living. That's how I got my business, and sort of, burnt the bridges kind of thing, and went out to start getting listings. And if it was an incompetent way to go about it, I found it and did it. It took me a while to learn how to be a lister, to list FSBOs and to list expireds, and just to knock on some doors and go, hi, I had no money for marketing, so that wouldn't have been on the menu. I think it was that first year I was a lister, I did 38 deals. The following year, like where the change came is I have a background in doing radio commercials back when a rock station that used to be a really, really innovative rock station called KDKB, it was innovative back then. It started in 1971, and I was part of it. And I used to write and produce comedy on that radio station, and I became extremely well known doing funny ads on that radio station. I wound up having advertisers seek me out and ask me to, they'll pay me to write ads and perform them in my voice for their company. And that's how I made my living for actually several years. I functioned like a small ad agency, and I knew how to write a radio ad. So in 1989, a friend of mine had a morning show that I'd become an integral part of on a classic rock station, and I thought this is going to be fantastic, so I go into the general manager and say, I'll write and produce for you fresh comedy stuff every week you can play if you'll give me some free radio ads. So he agreed, and the deal I got 10 spots a week. They'd tell me when they were going to run. And this was getting this gig was the second best thing that ever happened in my entire career. And I'm going to tell you the very best thing that ever happened was when I lost it. But I'm going to come back to that in a second.
Interesting.
But this was a life changer for me. So the first year that ad ran, and I say that ad, I want to tell you more about that.
Yeah.
I got no phone calls, none, not one call, not in the first year of the ad running. I was pretty convinced the station wasn't running them and was just tricking me. And I tried everything. Anybody who had ever had a radio ad on the air at that time, I found them. I got their ad copy. I put my name where their name was in the ad and ran it. And I got no calls, none. When I finally, in desperation, got the phone to ring once, not made a deal, mind you, just got a phone call. I was so brilliant, I asked the man, what made you decide to call me? And he said, it was the deal where you said I could cancel any time. Now that had just recently gone into my ad. Well, as you can imagine, it stayed in my ad.
Right.
And it took us then about 30 days of trial and error to find an ad that worked. I then popped my business up to 60 deals a year. And I plateaued at that 60 for about 3 years, but it was like having a corporate job. And I actually completely learned to list and became a lister. And for 3 consecutive years did about 60 deals, like 61, 62, 60, but right there, just at that 60 deal a year level. And then the station got sold to another company, and always when they change stations, they're changing the morning show. And since I was hooked into the morning show, I and all the people connected to the morning show were gone. It was like losing a corporate job. And I didn't know what to do. And my wife at the time brilliantly said, why don't you buy some commercials? Well, that thought had never crossed my mind. So I did. And now instead of using a disc jockey's voice to do the commercial, I used my voice and we went on to talk radio. We tried several stations, but we found one that worked the best, and I'll come back to that too. And I shot up to 100 deals that year. And that was spending $20,000 on radio.
Annually?
annually.
Okay.
That was my first year. I spent $20,000 and I did 100 deals. So now I think, God, I've got this down to a science. So the following year, I signed a contract with that station for 40,000, and I got twice as much business as I had the year before from the radio. So now I'm a genius. So the following year, I signed a contract for $80,000.
Oh my gosh!
And guess what I found out? Something called the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I had to learn to start being a bit of a media buyer. So anyway, that my career went like that. I went like to 100, then to around 125 deals, 130, then popped it up to 200. I think my best years on number of deals just been just slightly above 400, like maybe 420 deals, that kind of thing. But I've never done REO, so when I say I did 400 deals, it was 400 deals. I mean, it wasn't like with one customer.
Right.
So for a long time, and my best year on listings would have been 2006. We listed over 600 properties that year.
Wow.
So we're around 350 to 400 listings a year since then. So, but anyway, that tells you a little bit about like volume and that sort of thing. But radio, what I found, and then later we branched out into television. I've been on television now about 17, 18 years. Television is a more powerful medium, but it is much tougher to make work. Much tougher to make work, and it's more expensive to produce, and if you're off by an inch, you're off by a mile, and so the delivery is far more critical, and most agents that attempt to copy me, they miss it. When they do copy me and it works, they are obsessed with changing what worked, and by the time they're done changing it, it doesn't work anymore, and I don't know what to tell them to fix because they don't even have an ad on the air that would resemble mine. What I know with my ad is that it works. And the thing that we found out, and all of this is, if you say to me, why is this a true statement? I go, I'm not sure. I can speculate. But the stations that work the best are talk radio, period. Talk radio works better than any music format will work. When I say talk radio, the kind of talk radio I'm talking about is news radio, like stations like when the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, or 9/11, or the OJ trial, where people will tune to that station to hear about what's happened. They want to find out the latest on it. That type of station will work the best because people will tune to it for information. One of the most idiotic things that people who want to advertise on radio, the most stupid question I ever get asked, and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but the stupidest question someone could possibly ask is, how much does a radio commercial cost?
Yeah.
It's not a relevant question. $10 could be way too much to pay for a spot.
Yep.
And $300 could be a bargain. And they don't grasp that. They're thinking, well, how much does it cost to get one? Well, it's not a relevant question because you could be on a station, morning drive on a station that's a monster station that a spot should cost around $550 to $600, and you could buy it at $300. It's a screaming bargain. And somebody on a station with no ratings going, the spot's going to run between midnight and 4 a.m. and they're only $25. Honestly, it wouldn't matter if they were 10. They're still not worth it.
Yeah. No,
so they don't understand that, though.
Right. No, and let me just jump in here real quick. I mean, so because I do want to ask you some questions, but I also want to hear this fascinating story so far. You know, for us, I want to talk. We'll talk about formats in a second, but for us, just to talk on the point of cost, you know, we have a guy on in DC, the top station, aim, top spot, everything. That's $1,450 per a 60-second spot. We have a guy in Dallas. That's $955 a 60-second spot. And then you go all the way down. We have a guy in Charleston, which is the 99th market in a metro market, and we can buy apples to apples, same spots for $40. You
go.
So I totally agree with that. Now, going back to formats, Russell. The formats that we target, and I really want to get your take on this, is there's only three we look at. We look at news, talk sports. Those are the three formats, which I want to get your take on that. And in some markets, particularly the South, we may consider like a country station. But other than that, we don't look at, top 40. We don't look at adult contemporary. What's your thoughts on? I mean, I don't want to. I want to leave it open.
I want to answer that question. It's actually it makes me happy when I have a piece of wisdom I can share that'll actually matter and arrive somewhere and get used and continued to be used. Sports stations, I could not overemphasize. Stay away from them.
Wow.
Stay away from them. Don't use them. Don't use them. Don't use them. I have found advertising on sports events and sports stations to be a complete waste of money. You could go, well, what's the difference between that and news? The difference is when they're looking at a sports thing, they're looking for that sport, not information. But on a news program, and in fact on television, let me use that as an example, we advertise only on the news. First of all, no one TiVos or pre-records the news, except maybe someplace like The Daily Show, to watch it later. So the news is actually being listened to or watched while it's on. Where if you're on CSI Miami or Law and Order, then who watches that crap live?
Right.
They're recording it. And so you have all these choices on music. The music stations that work for us are oddly enough oldie stations and classic rock stations, and I'll tell you why in just a second.
Okay.
But oldies and classic rock, adult contemporary does not work at very well, and I'll tell you why it doesn't work very well. Stations that have a predominantly female audience, I want to avoid like the plague.
Mm-hmm.
I found that when we advertised on those stations, the number of phone calls would spike, so I could see, oh my God, this is working. And since back then I gauged the whole thing on number of calls I got, well, what I did, it took me a year to figure out is that women like to shop. So if you have an ad that says call for a free information package, they will call. The guy won't call. Men won't call for a free information package. Women will call for a free information package. Women will get they like coupons, they like this, but the point is they're shoppers. Most guys don't like to shop, so a guy that calls up is actually calling to go, hi, can you come over to list my house?
Yeah.
Where a woman's calling to go, send me the information, and she just reads it and throws it in the trash. So you get this type of phenomena. So I go rock stations in general, no, but classic rock, like rock, what I want to appeal to is males, and particularly gray-haired males. I'm not interested. You cannot advertise yourself to a buyer. They don't care. People that run ads going, look at me with my dog, aren't we cute, and we'll treat you like family. I'm going, yeah, you're an idiot, because you don't even know if they like family, number one.
Right.
They're not looking for someone with a dog. They're looking for a house. Buyers are looking for houses. Sellers are the only ones looking for agents. And so you have any station that appeals to younger people or appeals primarily to women. I don't want it. The ones that have the male and older males are the most fantastic stations, hence classic rock, oldie stations, that kind of thing. I've never found sports to work well, but there may be an exception to it. I mean, there's nothing we've ever done. Somebody else says, I've ran it on a sports station and it worked. I'm going, God, it's fantastic. But generally speaking, I don't think it would. Well, that doesn't mean it couldn't ever work.
Sorry, let me jump in there, Russell, real quick.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. So the demographic that we look at, we target men 35 to 54. 70, and this is just on average across the market. So men 35, 54, 75K plus annual income, homeowner, obviously, and college degree. Now that's the demo that we target. And again, the same message. I'm glad that some of this I'm on the right track, because the theory for us is that women do the shopping and men do the work. So so I know that we have the right demographic. Now, in terms of sports stations, You kind of like literally made me sick to my stomach when you said sports doesn't work, because like in Dallas is a that market. Again, we chose sports for that market because there's the Dallas Cowboys. It's a crazy. And if we looked for that demo, men 35-54, like that's where we found it. So, and we're spending a lot of money. That's a $20K a month spend for that guy there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And again, there's going to be an exception. So sometimes you have some stuff would be, I don't know, something like always be nice to customers or something. And you go, I think that'll probably be true across all ages and demographics and so forth. But sometimes something that doesn't work in one area. So I don't want to say it can't work for anyone anywhere, because number one, I don't have any data to say that. I can tell you for me, my exposure into sports stations was some of the news stations, not some of them, actually each one of them at one time or another, wound up buying or starting a sports station. And because I was a big advertiser, they would come to me and go, would you like some spots? And I would say no. And then they would say, well, we'll just give you some for a month. We'll just give them to you. And that way you can see if they work. They're trying to hook me on them. And they'd give me 20 spots a week.
Wow.
And then we didn't get a call. And I'm thinking, no, I don't need to the following month now start buying them from them, that kind of thing. But that's not to say, because if you have people that are loyal to a station, one of the things with talk radio and even some of the smaller financial stations, when I say financial, like they don't have monster ratings, but they're talk stations that specialize in financial news and have just people they're talking about money all the time. Now, sometimes those are stations that have a small audience, but it's a real hardcore audience. And, a couple of spots a week, 5 or 6 spots a week trickled on a station like that can produce some pretty amazing results sometimes. So, and the other thing I would say with anything is try it. If you have ad copy that works, it's a real simple test to go onto a station and try it.
Yeah, well, and I want to talk about maybe some workarounds to the 13-week standard contract that we see everywhere. So let me ask you this: so you were talking.
Don't do that until you've tested it. That's the biggest joke in the business.
What?
If I tell you, I remember going to a mastermind meeting when I was still at around 50, 60 deals that year.
Okay.
And I remember what the guy that then was a much bigger producer than me, and he came to the meeting, and everyone was saying, oh, hey, Dave, heard your radio ad on KTAR, which is the station I later wound up going big on. And he's like, we heard your ad. It's fantastic. And he goes, yeah, the ad's been great. I've had 3 friends call me up today to tell me they heard the ad. Now, he spent $25,000 on a 3-month contract, and he was told by the people at the station, this is the minimum, this is what you have to do, and you have to do that to test it. At the end of his $25,000 out of pocket, he had gotten only phone calls from his friends telling him they liked it. But I want to point out that his idea of the ad was working great was his friends called him. My idea of an ad working great is that strangers will call me.
Yeah.
If I was already going to get the call anyway, I don't need to run an ad in the radio.
For $25,000.
Yeah, and I remember I was another friend of mine. He's with Remax. He's a very successful guy. These are both were because they could afford to piss away $25,000. But I remember chatting with another guy, Remax agent, and he goes, I'm thinking of running an ad that says blah, blah, blah. What do you think? I said, I think it'll fail. And he goes, really? Well, I know he thought I'm telling him don't do it because I'm trying to keep radio for myself in Phoenix. Well, he spent $25,000 and, of course, didn't make any money and stopped doing it. And it's funny because people will do it thinking, well, there's nothing to it. But you have to have the delivery has to be good, the station has to be right, and the ad copy has to be right. And if any one of those is not right, the ad's not going to produce anything. Mm-hmm. So you have to have, but when you have ad copy that's tested, then the only variable is if you have ad copy that's tested and the delivery of the ad is good, like the actual person doing the voice. And like some agents should not do their own radio spot, and some most certainly should. And so when you have an ad that's being delivered properly and the copy's good, now the only variable is the station. So if you have, so you can test a station, I found, for about $1,000. Like if I know the ad copy's good and I know the delivery's good, so if I have an ad that's working well, I'm at the point now I can't test a station in Phoenix anymore. That's been true for many years, but at one time I could just simply spend $1,000 and then just if my calls went up, that station was good. If my calls didn't go up, I don't need to ever spend money on that station again.
Yeah,
you get to a point where if you're doing so much advertising, which station made them call? Hell, I'll be damned if I know now. But there was a time I actually knew.
And I want to know. Oh man, so this is extremely fascinating for me, and I hope my audience is loving this as well. So, but let me go back because I want to talk about that 13-week commitment. I want to talk about what kind of ROI that you typically want out of a station and delivery. I mean, I have my thoughts on that, but I would love to get yours, Russell. Let me go back to that time where you were at 38 deals, and then you found kind of what worked, and you went to 60. Now, you plateaued for 3 years at 60, right? 61, 62, 61, 60. Why do you think you plateaued? Was that a reflection of the audience size?
No. It's a reflection of the person, me. When you find agents, like if you moved it out of radio, if you moved it away from radio and you moved it just into an agent who was a 20 deal a year agent, well, the 20 deal a year agent who's going to be a 50 deal a year agent, let's just start with that. Let's skip radio.
Okay.
It's off on the wrong foot for that. So a 20 deal a year guy who wants to be a 50 deal a year guy, the secret, he has to think of himself as a 50 deal a year guy. Once he sees himself as a 50 deal a year guy, he will now behave like a 50 deal a year guy. But as long as he sees himself as a 20 deal a year guy, he will consistently behave like a 20 deal a year guy and get 20 deals a year. Well, let's go back down to make up to radio. Well, if you know that spending, I don't know, let's say $20,000 produces a certain amount of business for radio ads. Like if you were spending $20,000 and you get a certain amount of business. Well, if you weren't being stupid like I was and hitting diminishing returns and you wanted to double your business from it, you'd have to double your ad budget. So if he just kept spending the same amount going, I'm amazed I don't do any more business. Yeah, it is amazing. See, he'd have to, the old thing, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. I don't really think that's how I dress. But your marketing budget would have to be proportionate to the amount of business you plan to be doing.
Okay, I'm getting
So you get to that. So, yeah, you would have...
Interesting.
So why agents plateau is like if somebody's doing, and I can tell you this from personal experience, when somebody's doing, let's say for me, I was at a 20 deal a year level, and then all of a sudden I'm at a 60 deal a year level. When you first hit it, it seems like it's a lot.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're kind of delighted, like, look what I'm doing. Well, you have to get sickened by what you're doing before you jump it to the next level. You have to go, this is a load of crap. But as long as you're thinking, isn't it awesome? See, let's make it 100 deals. The first time you do 100 deals, like you're celebrating. If I did 100 deals now, I'd be crying.
Right.
So, but you understand. But the first time it happened, it's like, hey, look at me. I just did 100 deals that year. You see, so you'd have to be looking, like to achieve any goal, no matter what it is, you can't look up at that goal. You must look across or down at that goal.
Yeah. Wow. That's really very much. I mean, that's really insightful. It's kind of like, the first time somebody makes $100,000 a year or makes, $500,000 a year, and then you jump up to $1 million and you go back to 100, like, or 500, like, oh my God, like that's, I can, all right. That is very insightful. Russell, for me personally, and I imagine my audience as well, that's something I want to spend some time meditating on and see how I can really implement that into both my business as well as my life. So, okay. So I want to know for you, what in your mind, Russell, whether you spend 20 grand or 40 grand or 80 grand, whether it's 60, 100 or 200 deals, what kind of a return is appropriate, makes sense? What would you shoot for?
I know I should answer that question. I should have a good answer to that question. Mm-hmm. And 20 years ago, I had good answers to that question. My business model has shifted in time, and some people that you're going to hear what I'm about to say are going to go, "You got to be kidding me." And I go, "No, I'm not." My ad budget has been at the $800,000 a year level for a long time. Let me just start with that. So we spend about $800,000 on marketing a year. That has been true for, let's say, if I went back 10 years, has that been a true statement? Yes. So the market that we've been through in the last 10 years and the changes in the market that we've been through in the last 10 years have swung way high, way low, this way, that way. Mm-hmm. But we didn't stop advertising. We didn't stop our marketing. We didn't lay off staff. So my payroll costs did not go down when the market went crazy. We just absorbed it. So let's go back to, so the difference has been how profitable we are. So what is the percent of our marketing budget to profit has changed dramatically from year to year, but we haven't changed our amount of marketing. When you're doing, like when I was on one radio station, it was pretty damned easy to tell where the business was coming from.
Yeah.
It was really easy to tell where the business was coming from, even though when I wasn't on television yet, people would call and say, "We saw you on TV, we saw your billboard, we saw your bus bench." I didn't have billboards and I didn't have bus benches, but I wasn't on television, but that's where they saw me. Or they'd name a station that I had never advertised on and tell me they heard me there. And I don't want to argue with them, but I know they couldn't have heard me there because I wasn't there. That factor is just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. When you're on one television station and they say, "I saw the TV ad," well, that's probably where they saw it. But now I'm on all the networks. I'm on the big news local station, but I'm on all the networks every day here in Phoenix. So which station do they see me on? What are the odds they even know?
Right.
Which radio station did they hear me on? I don't know. I don't know how they heard it, and I'm not trying to track it anymore because I can't. I don't want to just frustrate myself. So we had years, let's go back to when the market meltdown occurred in fourth quarter of 2007. So what did my profit look like? Let's go 2008. So let's take my income and my expenses and go, that's right, we lost $400,000 that year. Like fed the business. But we didn't stop marketing and we didn't lay anyone off. Now, some people go, "Well, you can't do that." Well, if you can, if you've been doing it correctly prior to that. I don't think either one of us had any idea how long a ride that was going to be.
Yeah.
But so we had we had some very unprofitable years and years where we make money, yeah, but not very much. And so now we're transitioning into really in our market, a balanced market. And so sometimes some years are more profitable than others. Maybe part of it's because I'm older, I don't know. I'm not as hungry as I used to be. But the truth is, we're not making a killing in terms of what we're paying tax on right now, but I anticipate that I'll be really glad I stuck it out, so to speak. I'm not complaining about a damn thing, but as far as a percentage, we're way past that, and I don't know that I could give an answer that anyone could ever use.
No, that's a great, even though you didn't answer me specifically, the illustration is extremely informative because I think overall the point that I got from that, Russell, was that when you do, there's in my mind, and I don't want to start slicing, corners here, but there's something called marketing, and then there's something called advertising. Marketing is about brand building, and advertising is like saying, hey, this is a call to action. And so in those years that in '08, you fed the business $400,000. You're leaving all this echo effect, this residual effect. You're plastering it all over the streets, and that will pay off years down the road because it's just residual, just lays on top of stuff. So
there you go.
I think it's the great point that you made. So I'm very curious to know. Well, look, in terms of you choosing radio station, Russell. Now, and again, if you can't remember this, is a long time ago, I can understand, and we can talk about something else. But I'm very, very, when we look at markets and we look at stations, we know what formats, and we already talked about that. But then I get it very detailed into numbers, right? The audience size, total listening time, AQH, and if all those numbers make sense to me, like that's the station. Is that what you were relatively scientific like that as well?
No, well, yes and no.
Okay.
The thing that I've always been, this is me personally now,